Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're building the workshop. Woohoo! So if this is the first time that you're watching the channel, normally on here I don't build sheds. I normally do machining work. So work on the lathe, work on the mill. But because of moving houses and having to build this workshop, there's not been many videos for about a month or so now. But I've got to the point where I think I can share with you guys the progress that I've made. And in today's video, hopefully we're going to get all the sides done and the roof done of the workshop. So, a little bit about the workshop. This thing is 4 meters long and 3.5 meters wide. So, a little bit bigger than my old workshop back at the old house. So, I think what I need to do today, materials are turned up tomorrow, but there's a few little jobs I need to get done today. And the first one is just finish this row of bricks off. So, I'm going to get on with that. So to start with then, we're making this a 4-to-1 mix of sand to cement. So once I've got my 4 parts sand on there, I add my 1 part cement. From there I do a dry mix to start off with. This makes sure it's all mixed fairly evenly before I go on adding the water. By adding little bits you can get quite a nice little mix, and adding fairy liquid just helps to bind it all together and make it a bit more workable. So once that's all mixed up with the right amount of sand, cement and water, we're ready to start laying our bricks. And that looks quite a good mix now. So when it comes to laying the bricks, by no means am I really an expert at this. I've literally just YouTube videos and sort of copied people's advice on there. So I don't need these to be excellent, I just need them to stop any water ingress and be fairly level to sit the shed base on. So working my way along, making sure they're all level. I managed to get these bricks done fairly quick and quite happy with that. After the bricks were done then, I needed to put a DPC on top of this. That's a damp proof course, just to stop any water ingress into the bottom of the shed. So levelling it all off with the leftover cement that I've got gave it a really nice bed for the DPC to sit on. And also doing this method, if there's any slight imperfections in the brick or slight level issues, I can fix that with the cement. So laying the DPC down, making sure that was compacted all the way and nice and firm down to the bricks. Next we've got to do the timber. So this is really easy, literally just mark it up to where I needed it and cut it to length. The best thing about this build is so far nothing's had to be super precise, so I've not even had to mark this, just chopped it with my circular saw at the right level. And just like that, we're at a good place to screw this all together. Right then, it's the next day. I've just received the timber order, so I can get all this unloaded, shifted out the way and start making the timber frames which are going to house this workshop. So yesterday we got the brick wall all done with the DPC and 4x2 timber on top. That's all set now, so when it comes to making the timber frames I can sit that on there, no problems. So that's mostly what I'm going to be cracking on with today, getting all the sides of the workshop done, and if I've got enough time I'll be doing the roof. If not, I'll be coming back tomorrow to get the roof all done. To start off with then, I'm starting by measuring the sort of largest panel that I'm going to be making, the height and width. Turns out this is actually quite awkward because the panel was a little bit twisted, but not to say a ladder didn't help that out. So once I've got my measurement, I take it back over to sort of where I'm keeping the material and basically just start marking this out ready to be cut. So I'm just using a pencil and a square and then using my circular saw the same one that I use in the workshop. With those few lengths cut now, I can stick them on the grass and start to eyeball up what the frame's going to look like. So to begin with, I'm only going to sort of do this as like a window frame style panel, just but I don't want to cut all the timbers and find out they're either too short or too long. So just doing the bare minimum to start with makes this process a lot more sort of like error proof really. With the window frame all screwed together then, I can sort of move this into position where it's going to be housed and see how it fits. Because before I make any more cuts, I want to make sure the length and height of this thing is right. So turns out that was spot on. So cut some more timbers, screwed them into the frame and moved it into position for its final sort of assembly. These quick release G-clamps are really good for this application. I can compress the existing frame to the new frame before screwing it all together, making sure it doesn't separate because it's all clamped nicely in place. So with that new frame in position, I can now move over the old existing door frame, and this turned out to be a lot more trouble than I thought it would be. So eventually I got it into place and it just wasn't sitting right for some reason. Turns out I'd left some nails and screws protruding through the bottom that I didn't spot originally. So I had to get this thing off, and yeah, it didn't go to plan. Because this is sort of top heavy, it just toppled over and made my life a bit awkward. But eventually I managed to get it down to a point where it was nice and easy to lower it to the ground, and from there it was nice and easy just to cut off those old nails and screws with a grinder. I would not like to have had to do this in position because it would have been really awkward. With those nails all now ground off, this thing slid into position lovely. So it was nice and flush on the floor, and it was actually fairly perpendicular to the new frame that I just made, meaning we got a nice joint there to screw into. After that, it was quite a repetitive process really to make the other frame. It was literally measuring out timbers, marking them up with a square, making sure everything was nice and square and visible before taking it over to the circular saw. And from there it was just a load of repetitive cuts which the Evolution chop saw ploughed through really easy. Don't forget guys, this thing's designed for metal, so soft wood like this, it just absolutely eats through. And believe it or not, after that a lot more screwing. And that was all the frames built. So day 3 of the workshop build, and I had to stop yesterday just because it was getting so hot. To put things in perspective, here on the Isle of Wight, I think it got to about 37 degrees. So we had to have a little stop. I did come back in the evening and just do a little bit more. So I'll give you a catch up of where we're at and what we're going to get done today. Right then, so like you saw yesterday, we've got all the stud walls finished around the workshop, and I came back later that afternoon when things had cooled down a little bit, and I added the riser onto the roof. So I'll explain a little bit more later on how that works and how that changes the slope angle of the roof, but all you guys really need to know for now is that's a 1 foot riser across a 12-foot width shed. So what we need to get done for the rest of today is get the beams done. So I've got a couple up yesterday just to sort of hold the structure of the shed together a little bit more, because once you get these beams up it ties all the sides together and makes the structure really rigid. So that's what we need to do today. I'm spacing these 500mm apart, and I think we've got about, I don't know, about 10 to get done. Next thing I want to do then is just cover with you guys how we're going to notch out these bits of wood, and once we're all clear on that, then I'll start banging these out and getting these up, and the roof should come together pretty quick after this. So let's go through that now. Right then, working out the slope angle of the roof. So this isn't in perspective, but it's just to give you guys an idea of what's going on. The roof is basically going to resemble a triangle. Up this side here we've got our 1 foot riser, and in theory that slopes all the way down to nothing here. Along the bottom here, that's going to be the width of our workshop, which is 12 foot. And we want to basically work out this angle here, angle theta. So knowing that we know the adjacent and the opposite, we can use a bit of trigonometry now to work out what the angle is going to be. So using the TOA function, we can do the inverse of tan of 12/1, and that will give us our angle. So let's quickly whip that into a calculator. We're going to focus. So here on a scientific calculator we're doing the inverse tan 1/12, so that's our riser over the width of our workshop, and that gives us 4.76, so about 5 degrees of angle of slope on there. That's how you can do it mathematically. Luckily for us, some smart guy invented this, the quick square, and on there it basically got the sort of rise over foot, I think it is, so 1 inch rise over 1 foot, and it equates to about 5 degrees. If you were doing like a 2 inch rise over a foot, you'd get about 10 degrees. So basically every inch roughly over a foot will get you about a 5 degree slope. So that's what we're aiming for on our roof, 5 degree slope. So with that in mind, I think it's time to start notching out the timbers and get this frame all up together. First of all then, when it comes to notching out this bit of wood, I'm just making a mark on an uncut bit of wood just so I know exactly where my lengths are going to be. After that I'll take it down to the ground and I mark 2 sides. One of these sides is going to be 90 degrees and the other side, the side that needs to be angled, is going to be pivoted at a 5 degree slope. So by drawing 2 lines I can then join them up and I know exactly how much I've got to cut out of this. And using a square like this makes it really easy to join the 2 lines up while keeping it 90 degrees to the angled line. And after that it's really just a case of cutting it out the best you can. I'm using a jigsaw and a circular saw just to make life a little bit easier. You could do this with a wood saw, but it'll take you a fair bit of time. And with those notches done now, that slots into place really nice, and that's the first beam closest to the door done. After that it's just a case of doing these over and over again until you've done all of the roof. I'm spacing these 500mm apart, so I've got an even stagger going throughout. And eventually, after a couple of hours, we've got all the beams done and up in the roof. Now to take out any wobble in these beams, I'm putting up these noggins which are going to just tie them all together and keep the deflection down to a minimum. So I'm doing these 2 on one and 1 on the other and just spacing them out evenly as I go. Right then, the roof framework is all finished. Looking pretty good actually. I'm quite happy with how that turned out. And just so happens the sun has just started coming back out, so finished off with quite a good time there. So the next problem I've now got is I've bought these big sheets of 18mm OSB board, and at the time I thought that'd be great, yeah, get them up, be a nice solid roof, but I've run into a bit of a problem actually getting them up. Physically on my own I can't do it. I'll quickly show you an idea that I came up with to try and get them up there. So I came up with this sort of slide method, which I thought if I could slide them up halfway, get them over that notch, then I'd be able to pull them up the rest of the way, but it's just not happening. So I've got my friend Matt coming over after he finishes work, and hopefully we're going to try getting all the OSB boards up there. So I'll probably drop a time lapse of that, and that will probably sum up today's video. Hope you guys have enjoyed this. Hope you're super happy about the new workshop like I am, and join me in the next video where we'll be finishing off boarding it on the outside, and we'll be making a start on the inside with the ply lining and insulation. So stay tuned guys, I'll see you again very soon.